It's very often the case in politics that all of your options are bad, that there are no ideal outcomes. If you do X, bad things are going to happen. If you do Y, bad things are going to happen. And then whichever branch you pick, people are all going to point at you and say, you see, you should have done the other. But the reality is that since 9/11, all of the options that the West has had have been bad. Going into Afghanistan was a choice among lots of bad options. Prolonging the mission beyond the degradation of the Al-Qaeda bases was a choice among bad options. Extending it to cover nation building and female emancipation, again, was a choice among many bad options, and so ultimately was leaving. There were no good options, and I think we should be a little bit forgiving of the people who have to take these decisions.
Now, there's been a lot of criticism for Joe Biden, particularly in the House of Commons, from all sides, from people on the Tory benches as well as the Labour benches. Is there a growing rift now between the British Parliament and the United States of America?
I think a world without a US prepared to act as the global copper is a world in which there are no coppers. And we've just seen that, right? The UK government, we heard Ben Wallace say this, tried to put together an alternative coalition to hold the balance in Afghanistan. It was obviously impossible without US logistical support. So we just need to think of how is this going to look around the world? If you were a young, ambitious army cadet in Pakistan, do you want to be training in the US now or in China? If you're looking at this from Taiwan, how does it look? A world in which no one is prepared to act as the grown-up is not a world where we just get to relax, right? There are costs. So, of course, there are costs with intervention as well. We've all seen that in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, right? Those were the obvious visible ones. I'm not saying any of this is easy, but a world in which the honor and prestige of the West is diminished is also a world which becomes a little bit colder, a little bit grayer, a little bit more dangerous.
Now, you mentioned China there, of course. Also, Russia and Iran are those rushing to legitimize the Taliban regime as it takes hold in Afghanistan. How do we respond to this new axis of evil?
Well, even before this had happened, there was a massive joint military exercise by China and Russia last month in northwestern China, and it was more or less expressly directed against the West. I mean, the two great illiberal powers have come together in opposition to a sort of Anglosphere world order. And you've got to think, how does this look, not just from Beijing or from Moscow, but to any little tin pot tyrant? Look at how many emboldened petty dictators there have been, from Nicaragua to Belarus. People who have shrugged off US sanctions, have shrugged off Western criticism, because in the end they don't feel that they have to worry anymore. That the long drift towards a more Western, more American type of polity where you wanted to be more democratic, more capitalist, more liberal, freer, richer, all of that has been reversed. At some point in the last decade, it went into reverse. And that, we were complacent for a long time about it, but that complacency may have been bred of decades of security and prosperity, and we may soon have plenty of leisure in which to regret our previous attitude.